It is 3 a.m. in New York, 10 in Kiev, and 4 the Monday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Moon Gun-young. You're watching ARIRANG, Korea's only global network. 33 days have passed since the Sewol-ho ferry sank off Korea's southwestern coast, taking with it the lives of hundreds of people, many of whom were high school students. And on this Monday, President Park Geun-hye, in a nationally televised address that ended up being a tearful one, apologized for the disaster and laid out measures to bolster national safety. As our correspondent Choi You-sun reports, topping the list was dismantling the country's Coast Guard.
이번 사고에 제대로 대처하지 못한 최종 책임은 대통령인 저에게 있습니다.
For the first time since the Sewol-ho ferry accident last month, President Park directly apologized to the nation. It came amid criticism of her previous apologies, as many people felt she wasn't taking full responsibility as the head of state. Saying that the Coast Guard had failed to fulfill its duties in swiftly attending to the passengers of the sinking ferry, President Park said she was dissolving the organization.
국가안전처를 만들어 각 부처에 분산된 안전 관련 조직을 통합하고 지휘 체계를 일원화해서 육상과 해상에서 일어나는 모든 유형의 재난에 현장 중심으로 대응할 수 있는 체제를 만들겠습니다.
President Park also talked about cutting off ties between the public sector and private entities. Claims of cronyism between the two have been blamed for the government's insufficient and lax handling of the disaster. She suggested tripling the number of public organizations and affiliates that are barred from employing retired public employees and extending the period after which retired workers can return to the workforce. Regarding the punishment of those linked to the ferry disaster, the president seemingly took account of what the victims' families requested during a meeting at the presidential office last week.
필요하다면 특검을 해서 모든 진상을 낱낱이 밝혀내고 엄정하게 처벌할 것입니다. 그리고 여야와 민간이 참여하는 진상조사위원회를 포함한 특별법을 만들 것도 제안합니다.
As she read out the names of some of the ferry victims, President Park said that she will not leave their deaths in vain and designate April 16, the day of the sinking, as a day to remember their sacrifices. Choi You-sun, ARIRANG News.
And on the investigation front, prosecutors say they're done playing games with the de facto owner of the second ferry operator who has so far defied court summons. A special team tasked with bringing in Yoo Byung-hun by the end of this week is now in place. Our Shin Se-min has the latest developments.
Prosecutors looking for the elusive practical owner of the sunken Sewol-ho ferry say they will make all effort to bring him in by week's end. In a briefing held Sunday, the leader of the Sewol-ho investigation task force said a special squad of more than 40 detectives would be formed to track Yoo Byung-hun down and arrest him. He said Yoo and his family have mocked the government and challenged authority in defying orders to come in for questioning. The 73-year-old is suspected of tax evasion and embezzlement of millions of dollars from company affiliates owned by him and members of his family. Prosecutors believe his illegal actions contributed to the sinking of the Sewol-ho ferry. Yoo is presumed to be holed up inside a religious compound his family owns in Gyeonggi-do province. The area is currently surrounded by supporters of Yoo who are blocking off authorities from entering. The prosecution has said it is considering raiding the compound. Arrest warrants for Yoo's second son and eldest daughter, both of whom are residing abroad, have been issued after the two failed to appear for questioning. Yoo's eldest son, who was involved in the day-to-day operations of the company that owned the Sewol-ho ferry, has also refused to cooperate with prosecutors. His whereabouts are unknown. Over a month has passed since the Sewol-ho ferry capsized off the southwestern coast of Korea. The confirmed death toll from the tragedy stands at 286, with 18 victims still unaccounted for. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
And front and center of a month-long parliamentary session that kicked off on this Monday in Seoul's National Assembly will also be the ferry disaster. The Korean people want lawmakers to put aside their political differences and come up with substantive results, but With the rival parties already bickering over the timing and scope of the investigation, there are fears the next 30 days could end up being an unproductive grind. Our political correspondent Choi You-sun has this report.
The Sewol-ho ferry tragedy will dominate this month's parliamentary extraordinary session. Under the plans already agreed upon by the ruling Saenuri Party and the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy, a request for a parliamentary investigation into the disaster will be submitted on Tuesday. It will be followed by a two-day session where lawmakers will grill government officials over the failed response to the nation's worst maritime disaster in decades. But not all related officials will appear.
The Oceans Minister and the Coast Guard Chief will not attend the hearings as they have the responsibility of being at the Sewol-ho ferry accident site.
The opposition alliance wants a number of investigations into the tragedy launched immediately. It is calling for a parliamentary probe, a separate independent council investigation, and a parliamentary hearing.
The special committee on Sewol-ho ferry opens today. We must devise measures to help the families of the victims, and we must conduct a parliamentary probe. The National Assembly must accomplish all we need to do.
However, the ruling party is likely to approach the issues more cautiously and focus more on follow-up measures and uncovering the cause of the accident. Especially with regard to the special council investigation, the two parties are unlikely to reach a consensus, with the Saenuri Party and New Politics Alliance for Democracy bickering over its timing and scope, as well as the appointment of a special counsel. Both rival parties plan to finalize the details of a special parliamentary investigation into the April ferry disaster on May 27th. Choi You-sun, ARIRANG News.
When the latest news meets the latest business stories, we give you a bigger and better picture of the world. Business Today with Park Geun-hye, every weekday, only on ARIRANG.
The defense ministers from South Korea, the U.S. and Japan will sit down in Singapore later this month to discuss North Korea's nuclear and missile programs. South Korea's defense ministry announced today that Kim Kwon-jin, Chuck Hagel, and Itsunori Onodera will meet May 31st on the sidelines of the 13th Asia Security Summit. Although the details of the meeting are to be finalized sometime next week, the North Korea threat will top the agenda, especially with a fourth nuclear test looming. The sharing of military intelligence will also likely be on the table, as Seoul has been pushing for the three sides to sign an MOU on that very matter. The trilateral defense meeting has been held annually since 2009. Now, over in Vietnam, there has been quite an exodus of Chinese citizens over the weekend following the deadly anti-China rioting there. Some 3,000 expats have fled the Southeast Asian country, and that number is expected to grow as Beijing sends ships to evacuate more of its nationals in the coming days. Hanoi, in response, has promised stronger measures to quell the anti-China unrest. Here's our Kim Ji-yeon with the story.
China is demanding Vietnam to do more to protect Chinese nationals amid anti-China protests in Vietnam, sparked by an oil rig in disputed waters in the South China Sea. Beijing is urging Hanoi to take tougher measures to quell the violence. It evacuated thousands of Chinese nationals from Vietnam following the attacks that killed at least 2 people and injured dozens. China has reportedly sent 2 charter flights and 5 ships to the region.
We sent our best crewmen to Vietnam for the evacuation.
A country heavily reliant on foreign investment, the Vietnamese government has called for an end to the protests. Businesses and workers affected by the unrest have criticized the local authorities for their lax response, accusing the police of arriving too late or in insufficient numbers. Vietnamese police have a reputation of blocking such demonstrations before they can take place. Anger spread and protests of hundreds took to the streets of Vietnam's major major cities after a state-run energy firm from China towed an oil rig in waters claimed by both China and Vietnam. This recent spat is the worst since a border dispute between the two countries in 1979. Kim Jeong, ARIRANG News.
Now, following her emotional televised address earlier this morning, President Park has just departed for a 2-day visit to the United Arab Emirates. During the 40-hour-long trip, she'll attend a ceremony to celebrate the installation of a multi-billion-dollar nuclear reactor that Korea hopes will open the door to other mega deals. Our Na Hyun-kyung with this report.
Despite criticism about the timing of the trip, President Park is squeezing in a short 2-day visit to the United Arab Emirates starting Monday. It goes to show just how important she and the government regard the joint project in the Arab country. A 1,400-megawatt light water reactor built with Korean technology will be installed in Baraka, west of Abu Dhabi, and President Park will attend a ceremony celebrating the installation of the reactor, which is part of an estimated $40 billion bid Korea won in 2009. The deal includes the construction of 4 nuclear units in the region by the year 2020. Approximately 1,600 Korean workers are currently at the construction site in Baraka, and depending on the progress, Korea is said to be receiving up to nearly $300 million per month from the UAE. The first nuclear unit is not expected to be completed until 2017, but Korean government officials are hoping President Park's visit this week will demonstrate the nation's strong commitment to the project and send a message to other countries that may be considering similar deals with Korea. Saudi Arabia, for example, is looking to generate up to 20% of its electricity needs through nuclear energy by 2030. It plans to do so by building a total of 16 nuclear units by the year 2032, with the goal of having the first reactor online in 7 years' time. Vietnam is also looking for a contractor for building nuclear power plants, and with winners of both bids expected to be decided by the end of this year, the state-run Korea Electric Power Corporation is pulling out all the stops to make sure the deals are brought to Seoul. Na Hyun-kyung, ARIRANG News.
Korea's unemployment rate officially stands at 3.9%, which is an enviable figure compared to many other countries around the world. In reality, however, that figure is very far off the mark. Our Hwang Ji-hye tells us what's behind the discrepancy and what the government is doing to address it.
The latest version of Korea's jobs data shows that slightly over 1 million people are unemployed, but the data doesn't tell the whole story. Economists look past the official jobless rate to a so-called actual unemployment rate that includes those who are underemployed or discouraged from finding a job. Taking them into account, the actual jobless bracket included over 3 million individuals in April, more than 3 times the government's official figure. Statistics Korea, which compiles the jobs data, counts only those who don't have a job despite their efforts to get one. The nation's announced unemployment rate stood at 3.9% last month, but the actual jobless rate was 11%. Experts say the current method of counting the unemployed is too narrow and does not provide a real picture of the labor market conditions. In response to the criticism, the Statistics Agency plans to release a new set of data in November which provide jobless figures based on international standards, which include the underemployed and the discouraged. It said the extra data would give a more accurate explanation of the nation's job market. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
Now, China's growth outlook has taken another step backward. Bloomberg reports that the average GDP growth rate outlook for China now stands at 7.3% this year, according to the combined estimates of 57 financial institutions worldwide. That's down from the 7.5% outlook given just 2 months ago. Experts attribute the downward slide to financial indicators that show a gradual decline in the Chinese economy, including a nearly 18% drop in the local real estate market last month. Meanwhile, going strong is Samsung, and its dominance isn't merely limited to the smartphone market. 7 out of 10 smart watches sold globally during the first quarter this year were made by the Korean firm. U.S.-based market research firm Strategy Analytics says Samsung Electronics shipped out some 500,000 smartwatches in the first 3 months of this year, good for more than 71% of the global market. That's a big jump from the 52% recorded last year, and also far ahead of Samsung's 2 closest competitors in the market, which are Sony and Pebble. They both had 11% of the market in the first quarter. Strategy Analytics said the only possible threat to Samsung's dominance is Apple's iWatch, which is set to hit the stores later this year. U.S. telecom firm AT&T has announced plans to acquire top satellite service provider DirecTV for nearly $50 billion. The mammoth deal would make AT&T the #2 provider in terms of television subscribers in the U.S., just behind a combined Comcast-Time Warner cable. Now, the board of directors at both AT&T and DirecTV have already approved the deal, which has the potential to reshape the television landscape in the U.S. Now, under the terms, AT&T will pay $48.5 billion to DirecTV in both stock and cash, and also the debts of the DirecTV, which will push up the overall value of the deal to more than $67 billion. The companies hope the transactions can be completed in about 12 months. And Comcast, the biggest cable provider in the U.S., is currently awaiting approval for plans to merge with Time Warner Cable. President Park Geun-hye formally apologized this Monday for a ferry disaster last month that killed more than 300 passengers, mostly school children. Now, she said she would break up the Coast Guard because it had failed in its rescue mission. The Korean leader also unveiled a list of measures to overhaul the nation's safety system. For an in-depth analysis, we have our regular contributor, Dr. Kim Byung-ju, joining us live in the studio. Good afternoon to you. The president's apology on national television earlier today, now it ended up being a tearful one in the end. Your overall impression?
The apology came out upfront as soon as it began, and then her deepest regrets expressed, and the news of closing down of the Coast Guard, and then her plans of reorganizing the government and getting all kinds of investigations going ahead. And at the end, of course, her naming of some of the victims and calling them hero. I don't know about you, but I think it's one of the best possible kind of sharing of ideas, visions, and sense of direction together with emotion with the people that we will remember for some time. I think this nation really needed this kind of not only presidential apology that came up front, but also in a way for a form of grieving, if you will. And at the end, when she named some of the victims with the voice that was shaking and with her tears flowing down, and she did not wipe up her tears. And I thought, she was keeping her chin up. And I thought that was, best possible, at least in my own view, presentation of leadership with courage and fortitude together with human face and, I suppose, a warm heart. So I thought it was a very, very good and effective closure or grieving, national grieving that we really badly needed. So in that sense, I think what she presented this morning, I thought, in my own view, was quite an impressive one.
Right, so a heartfelt apology together with the kind of measures that will be taken in order to overhaul the nation's safety system.
Right.
So she did, unveil a list of them, and topping it was dismantling the Coast Guard.
Right.
Now, how do we evaluate the government reorganization? I mean, to the average citizens, we might wonder, how is disbanding the Coast Guard supposed to make the nation safer?
Well, actually, that's a question that will continue to be addressed as we move forward, and ensuring the safety itself will remain a big issue here. But I think the closing down of the Coast Guard itself, and actually creating this kind of new body based on reorganizing the function, seems to be working here, because the concern in the minds of many experts so far was just creating a separate organization on top of existing functions and manpower and all that. But what she presented this morning was replacing them and reorganizing them and getting rid of possible overlaps. And I thought that idea itself, or sense of direction, was quite an effective one. So it's not only the Coast Guard that will be affected, but as we discussed, the Public Safety and Administration Ministry, they'll be losing their own function related to that public safety.
Right.
And then Marine Affairs Ministry, they'll be losing their function about the marine affairs related safety functions, right? So they'll be all merged to create a separate organization. So in terms of the concerns before her address, President's address this morning, that there will be some kind of new organization just being created and maybe continue to use people's tax money and all that kind of concerns were effectively addressed. The effectiveness, of course, will need to be addressed in the future as we go ahead and move forward here. But I think what was announced was quite surprising in my own view, and looks like a no-nonsense measure.
Right, so all in all, I suppose creating a new body that overlooks the safety and solely the safety of the Korean people, may that be on land or sea or air or whatnot, just for the safety measures.
Right.
Now, the president also proposed changes in the way that the government makes appointments, or manages human resources.
Right.
Your evaluation of that?
What she announced was not like immediate actions that need to be taken, but she was presenting a longer-term vision where she wants to get rid of the high officials exam, for instance, which has been long regarded as one of the strengths as well as weakness of Korean government, human resource management system. And she said it needs to go in the long run. And she wants to open up the government hiring system at all different levels so that they can hire experts and expertise from the private sector, which makes a lot of sense. And also, she wants to get rid of this circular appointment system where people will move around to become general managers so that they can move up the organization. She wants to discontinue that, and she wants to post different people at their own positions for a long time so that they can build their expertise. I think those ideas have been talked about for quite some time here in Korea, but I don't think we had the courage to actually have the top leadership saying that this will be done. So this is a good starting point, and we will wait and see whether this could be really fully implemented or not. There are a lot of challenges ahead in running such organizations. For instance, if you want to keep certain people in certain positions for a long time to build their career, build their expertise, rather than becoming a journalist who will become a candidate of a ministry and all that, in order to introduce change, you have to increase their salaries, right? If you're getting rid of the prospect for promotion, you have to increase the salary. That's tax money. So that kind of trade-off needs to be worked out in the future. But I think that setting the direction itself was, once again, a very positive one.
Right, so I suppose getting rid of the, not getting rid of, but easing down on the hierarchical system and more on specialization, specialty of each individual, focused on that area. That makes sense to me. I don't know about other things, but that part at least. So how do we expect the Korean people to respond to the president's address today? More specifically, what about the business community?
Business community continue to be concerned, and today, with the president's words, I think the concerns will still remain. such as, I mean, we all know that all this human network, human ties need to be addressed, and we have to move forward and to come up with a better and advanced system. But this means actually getting rid of the system that has, in some positive ways, worked pretty well for the cause of efficiency. Better communication with the government, between government and business community and all that. We'll have to find new ways. So there'll be an extra cost for everybody. And the safety measures, safety regulation, certification, and government procurement. President said that they want to introduce a new system, and this will be a cause of concern about the future costs. So we need more time on this, and then I can only tell you that business community will remain quite concerned.
Right. You know, we need to wait and see how these measures will be implemented, whether they will be carried out all out, and whether they will prove to be as effective as what the president has in mind right now.
Right.
But as for the address itself today, if you were to give a grade?
I think overall the presentation and the way she communicated with the people was very good. She introduced big ideas, and as I said, those big ideas need further details. So for now, I'm a little bit reserved on that side, but overall communication, very good.
All right, Dr. Kim Byung-ju, thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
And that's your business today on this Monday. Thank you for watching, and do join us again at 6 p.m. Korea time on Early Edition at 6.